Hi, I'm Jenny Keith. Thanks very much for inviting me and publishing my short story, which this isn't, but I think this lent itself a little bit better to reading aloud. This is a very beginning of a work in progress. When I was 3 years old, I saw a burned man standing in the backyard. It was summer. The windows were open, and I had been put to bed before dark. I was wearing cotton fleece pajamas, and the air smelled of honeysuckle and crushed grass. I could hear the television muttering to itself in the living room, and the air was cool and blue. The sun had just gone down. The man stood at the far side of the yard by the fence that distinguished our property from the wilderness. The fence was high and rimmed with barbed wire. Behind the fence were layers of trees, and farther back, dark, crooked pines that covered the ground with brick pink needles and cones frosted with sap. Beyond the pines, somewhere, were the railroad tracks, where at night the trains would come roaring through, and close thunder, both apocalyptic and reassuring. I couldn't hear my parents. Perhaps they were dozing on the sofa, perhaps out front, regarding the blue hydrangeas, or pondering the Japanese beetles that gnawed on the roses, or making plans for the slowly growing mummy's head of a paper wasp nest under the eave of the garage. I pressed my hands against the screen in the window and squinted at the man standing in the near dark. His clothes looked dusty and blackened, charred, swirling with clouds of dust or lingering smoke. I saw him move his mouth, and his eyes glittered black, but I didn't hear anything. I was not afraid. My face was close to the screen, close enough to smell the smell of the metal mesh and the outdoors snared in it, and there was another smell, the smell of the man himself, upwind, of oil and machines and something else I knew but couldn't distinguish. I stared at him and he moved closer, not by walking really, but by way of a slow, strange dance. A crumpled hat partially hid his face, but there was something different about his face, too. From the distance, it looked as if something black had modeled his face, and when he smiled, his teeth seemed narrow, with dark spaces between them, like beads or pegs. 2 years later, I would have known to call for my parents and report a stranger in the yard. 10 years later, I would have screamed and screamed. But on this night, when President Kennedy had less than 4 months to live, I stayed silent. The man's presence, I understood somehow, was between him and me, my first true secret. He asked how old I was in a voice full of smoke and dirt. I heard him then and held up 3 fingers. He was looking for someone, he said. I stayed quiet. It didn't seem like he was talking directly to me, but almost as if he were talking to someone behind me. He said something else I didn't understand and made some sort of gesture with his gray-black hands, which I felt to mean, be careful, be quiet, be careful, be quiet. The next day and for several days after that, I drew his picture. My mother found the stack of pictures and looked at them slowly, one by one. "Who is this?" she asked. "The man in the backyard," I said, putting my fingers to my lips. "Why is he so dark like a shadow?" "He got in a fire," I said. She made a face of terror. I stopped showing those pictures to my mother, but I kept making them, and many others. I got a set of paints from my grandmother and started painting. When I showed my paintings of birds and flowers and houses and girls, the adults smiled. When I showed the other pictures of dreams, of the burned man, of things I couldn't name, they looked at each other, then at me, then at my mother. I started hiding those paintings under my bed. Thanks a lot.